I'm partway through making an autumn wreath to hang on my front door. If you love all things flower arranging, crafting, with a little bit of charity shopping, shopping thrown in too, why don't you consider subscribing to my channel? All you need to do is to tap the big red button that says subscribe, and that means that next time you open the YouTube app on your phone, your tablet or your laptop, one of my videos will pop up for you to enjoy. If you want to create your own dried flower wreath, you're going to need a wreath frame. I've used just a skinny metal frame, a hoop really, not the double track frame that you may well have seen people making Christmas stories with. You'll need some mossing wire. I think actually it's quite helpful to have 2 reels of mossing wire on the go, and then you'll need your own selection of dried flower materials. Now, I did not buy a single one of the dried flowers that I'm going to be using in my wreath today because I have been foraging over the summer months, cutting things from my garden and saving materials that I know are going to dry from any bunches of flowers that I've bought over the summer period. And of course, if you haven't been saving materials to dry over the summer months, you can always shop at your local craft and DIY store, your local florist, or you may even find a specialist retailer near you. Hello there, I'm Julie from Julie Davis Flower Workshops and Flower Start, the online flower arranging classes. So my aim today is to finish off this wreath, showing you the technique I'm going to be using, some top tips for how I select my plant materials, and also as it's autumn season, how I can just sort of zhuzh it up a bit with a little bit of orange as a nod to Halloween, the autumn season, and just to say it's not the height of summer anymore. This is how far I've got at the moment. I've just spent a little bit of time off camera making myself some bundles of dried flower materials to then attach onto my wreath frame. As you can see, I've got some additional materials to make more bundles if I need to use them. This is the type of hoop which I started off with. I think it's about 45 centimetres in diameter, and if you're interested in sourcing your own, I'll leave a link to one in the notes underneath the video. Now what you'll see is I have covered my wreath with a layer of moss, bound it on using my mossing wire. And the reason why I've done that is because I was just slightly concerned that I was going to attach my bundles of dried flowers onto that slippery wreath frame, that they would just slide around too much. And if you don't have any moss to hand, it might be worthwhile investing in some of this buttonhole tape. This is like a crepe paper tape and it's brown in colour. And what you can do is rip off sections of it and just take your time and bind the tape around the hoop, and that will also give you a little bit of grip so that things don't slide around quite so much. So the tape isn't actually sticky, you just need to stretch it out in your hand and the warmth of the hand will hold it in place. See, it doesn't move. You can see here that I've already started my wreath, and I wasn't quite sure how many bundles of my dried flowers I would need. Have a guess in the comments how many you think I will have used by the time I complete this project. You'll see here that I've got 1 reel of wire attached to the wreath, and then I've got another reel of wire to make my bundles. So what I do is I go through and make lots of little bundles, and then when I've got fed up or I've used up my materials, I then start to add them on to my wreath. And you can see that with each of my bundles of materials, they do vary slightly, but I've tried to make sure I've put 2 ears of corn in each bundle, something round, a little bit of purple, I've got some statice and there's this lavender here, and then just something a little bit fluffy. And in that way, hopefully, I'll have had a random mix of materials so it won't suddenly look like I've changed my mind halfway around the wreath. So trying to keep it random, got my 2 ears of corn or wheat, I'm going to just adjust them slightly in my hand so one sits a bit higher and one sits a little bit lower. I've got some dried lavender, and that's come from my garden. The wheat has come from a dog walk on the verges of the fields, and something round too. So here I've got a poppy, other bundles have got nigella in it, and I've also got some small echinops thistle. And then I take my binding wire, my mossing wire, I'm trying to use up my odds and ends here, and go round 3 times. Cut off the wire, bend in those cut ends, and then trim to length. To start my wreath off, I bound on some wire and just pulled it quite tight, almost like tying a knot. If you're going to do some stitching, you just need to make sure that the wire is firmly held, and this wire then is kept on the wreath. I'm not cutting that one at all, which is why I've got 2 lots of wire on the go, one to do my binding onto the wreath and another reel of wire to make up my little bundles. I don't know whether you've already watched the video that I posted last week, the one where I made a wreath out of chestnuts on a straw base, and I was saying how the wreath has got 3 sides to it, the top section, the side section and the inner section. So it's not quite so defined here with a skinnier wreath form, but you need to bear the same thing in mind. So as I place on my materials, I'm thinking whether to put it in the middle, to the side, or on the inside edge. And what you want to do is make sure that the bushy heads of your little bundles cover up the wrapped wires from the previous bundles. And keep going in the same direction with your wire, pulling it firmly. So I go around twice. Pick up my next bundle, go to the outer edge and just slide the materials down a bit. It's up to you how chunky your bundles are and how full you make your wreath. If you place everything quite close together, you'll have a really luxurious full wreath, but you might run out of materials. And of course, you can always space them out a little bit more, but just make sure you're always covering up the binding from the previous bundle of material. And you've guessed it, I didn't have enough bundles to go all the way around my wreath. I've got about 7/8 of the way round. So it looks like I don't have much more to go, but I reckon that's probably going to be another 10 bundles of my dried materials. And as you can see, hopefully I've managed to distribute the materials reasonably evenly and to try and keep the thickness of the wreath consistent too. So I need to keep up my little mantra, 2 ears of corn, something round, something fluffy, and something purple. Make a little bouquet in my hand. And bind that together. Once, twice, cut the ends, tuck in the cut ends of wire, and you will need to make sure when you finish your wreath that you haven't got any of those scratchy ends showing. You don't want to be damaging your front door or your wall or whatever you're going to be hanging up your wreath. 1 down, 9 more to go. And the tricky bit with a wreath is you always need 1 more bundle to finish off. So try not to skimp. Keep following that pattern round. 1 to the side, 1 to the middle, and 1 to the edge. And then when I get back to the beginning, which isn't here, it's actually under there, that's where you need to make sure you add in your extra materials, making sure you don't snap off the first bundles that you added. So we've got 3 more bundles left. Is that going to be enough to finish off? So tucking the stems right underneath, making sure I don't bind over the first little tufts, the tufts of the first bundle, weaving my way carefully between. Does that look like a seamless gap, or do you think I need one more here and two more over here? Can you see where the join is? So I'll carefully wind the last lot of wire through the wreath, turn it over, and then do a little bit of casting off at the back. So cut myself about 10 centimetres worth of wire and thread it through. So what do you reckon? Can you tell where the beginning is and where I've bound off at the end? So I think this makes a fabulous dried flower wreath. But it's the autumn time, and does this say autumn to you? Well, actually, I think it needs a touch of orange. So I've saved myself some dried carthamus stems, which have got bright orange tufts in them. So I'm going to take my glue gun and just slide in an occasional flash of orange. So I really will feel like I'm ready for Halloween and all things autumn. Just a little bit of orange to give it a bit of an autumnal lift. I love all these contrasting shapes and textures which make your arrangements look more visually appealing. And here's my finished door wreath. What do you reckon? And if you've been watching really carefully, you might notice some other flashes of orange. And if you'd like to know what I incorporated into my wreath just to give it that lovely autumn glow, well, that's some extra footage in my YouTube membership group. And if you'd like to enjoy bonus footage and early access to my regular Monday uploads and also access to my free monthly Zoom flower class, well, you'll need to join the channel. All you need to do is to click the down arrow underneath this video and then click where it says join. That's all for me for now, and I'll see you again next time. Now, where shall I hang this? Indoors or outdoors? Well, on that subject, I probably will hang this wreath up outside, but just so you know, my front door is protected from the elements, and if you're planning to put your own dried door wreath on your door and it gets battered by the wind and rain, it's not going to last very long. Quite pleased with that.